What if the most dominant player in women's basketball isn't the most famous one? What if being the best still isn't enough? For years, A'ja Wilson has done everything the sport asks of a superstar: MVP awards, championships, historic performances, the kind of resume that should lock her into the GOAT conversation without debate. And yet, listen closely to her own words, and you hear something deeper than confidence. You hear urgency, a need to be remembered, a frustration that greatness alone hasn't translated into the recognition she believes it deserves. Then everything changed. Because the moment Caitlin Clark entered the league, the entire power structure of women's basketball shifted overnight. Not slowly, not gradually, instantly. Headlines followed her everywhere. Viewership exploded. Money poured in. And suddenly, the spotlight that veterans spent years chasing locked onto one rookie and refused to move. That's when people started noticing the tension. Every time Clark's name trended, fans began watching Wilson more closely. Her interviews, her social media posts, her reactions or lack of them. Online, the conversation grew louder. Was this frustration? Was it jealousy? Or was it something much more complicated than that? Because this story isn't really about two players. It's about what happens when a league changes faster than its stars can adjust. It's about the uncomfortable collision between performance and popularity, between grinding for years and arriving at the perfect cultural moment. And it's about what recognition really means in a sport that's finally breaking into the mainstream. For the first time, the WNBA isn't just talking about respect. It's talking about revenue, influence, and who actually moves the needle. And that shift has created winners, tension, and questions nobody can ignore anymore. So ask yourself this as we start. Why does one player feel overlooked despite dominating the league, while another rewrites the record books without winning a single championship yet? This isn't a simple rivalry. It's a turning point. And by the end of this story, you'll understand why women's basketball may never feel the same again. Before the spotlight ever shifted, A'ja Wilson was already doing something rare. She wasn't chasing hype, she was building dominance. From the moment she entered the league, Wilson's game translated immediately. Not just stats, but impact. She controlled the paint, dictated matchups, and forced teams to rewrite game plans around stopping her. MVP trophies followed. Championships followed. Teammates followed her lead. If you asked coaches or players who the most feared presence in the league was, her name came up fast. And that's the key difference people forget. Wilson didn't rise through viral moments or social media buzz. She rose through nights where nothing came easy, through playoff pressure, through being the focal point every defense circled in red. She earned respect in the most traditional way possible, by winning when it mattered. For years, that felt like the right formula. The league preached it: work hard, stay consistent, let your game speak, and Wilson did exactly that. She became the standard veterans pointed to when talking about what greatness in the WNBA looks like: reliable, relentless, undeniable. But here, where the tension quietly began. While Wilson was stacking accolades, the league itself was still fighting for attention. Salaries were capped, exposure was limited, and even the best players learned to temper expectations about fame and money. Greatness didn't guarantee spotlight, it guaranteed respect inside the basketball world. That reality shaped Wilson's mindset. When she talked about legacy, it wasn't about being trendy. It was about being remembered alongside the greats, being mentioned when people debate the top 3 to ever do it. Rings, MVPs, sustained excellence. That was the blueprint she followed because for decades, that's how basketball history was written. And for a long time, it worked. Wilson became the face of winning in the WNBA, the example, the measuring stick, someone younger players were told to study if they wanted longevity and dominance. She did everything right, by the book, by the culture, by the standards the league had always set. which is why what happened next hit so hard. Because when recognition suddenly started flowing in a completely different direction, it didn't just feel surprising. It felt like the rules had changed mid-game. And that's when the gap between greatness and attention became impossible to ignore. Then everything changed fast. Because Caitlin Clark didn't arrive quietly. She didn't wait her turn. She didn't ease into the league and pay dues the way everyone before her had been told to do. She showed up already carrying momentum that women's basketball had never seen before. From day one, the attention followed her everywhere. Her rookie WNBA salary looked normal on paper, barely above the league minimum. But off the court, that's where the shockwaves hit. Multi-million-dollar endorsement deals started stacking almost immediately. Nike locked her into a long-term deal worth more than what most veterans would make in an entire career. Gatorade followed. Wilson Sporting Goods followed. Corporate America didn't hesitate, they sprinted. And that's what made it different. This wasn't just about performance. This was about reach. Clark brought something the league had been chasing for decades: massive mainstream attention. TV ratings exploded the moment her name appeared on a broadcast schedule. Arenas sold out weeks in advance. Road games felt like home crowds because fans showed up just to see her play. Entire cities felt the impact. Local businesses around arenas saw spikes on game nights. Merch flew off shelves. Networks reshuffled programming just to feature her. Suddenly, women's basketball wasn't asking for attention, it was demanding it. And here's the part that rattled everything. Clark hadn't won a championship yet. She hadn't logged years of playoff battles. She hadn't built a resume the traditional way. But the market didn't care. Brands weren't buying history, they were buying momentum, audience, and cultural pull. That shift exposed something uncomfortable. For the first time, greatness on the court wasn't the only currency that mattered. Visibility mattered just as much, maybe more. Clark brought in new fans who had never watched the WNBA before. Casual viewers, young kids, corporate sponsors who suddenly saw women's basketball as profitable, not just progressive. And while that growth helped the league overall, it also disrupted the hierarchy that had been built over years. Veterans watched a rookie leapfrog into rooms they had never been invited into, not because they weren't good enough, but because the spotlight finally found someone who could carry it beyond the game itself. Clark didn't slowly rise to the top. She rewrote the map overnight. And that sudden shift is exactly where the tension began to simmer. Because when the spotlight moves that fast, someone is always left standing in the shadows. The moment everything truly cracked wasn't a game, a stat line, or a playoff run. It was a contract. When Nike finalized its massive long-term deal with Caitlin Clark, the reaction inside the WNBA was immediate and divided. 8 years, reportedly $28 million guaranteed, a number so far beyond the league's normal financial reality that it didn't even feel real at first. For fans, it was celebration. For sponsors, it was validation. But inside locker rooms, it landed very differently. Because this wasn't just the biggest shoe deal in women's basketball history. It was a signal, a loud one. Nike wasn't rewarding longevity. They weren't rewarding championships. They weren't rewarding years of carrying the league on their backs with little recognition. They were betting on attention. That's where the tension started to boil. Veteran players had been with Nike for years. Some had signature shoes. Some had built relationships quietly, professionally over long stretches of time. A'ja Wilson was one of them. Her resume was spotless. MVPs, rings, dominance, consistency. She checked every box the old system valued. And yet, here was a rookie leapfrogging into a financial tier nobody else had ever touched. Publicly, most players stayed quiet. Privately, the frustration was hard to miss. Soon after the deal went public, Wilson's social media activity shifted. She never named Clark directly. She didn't need to. Posts about putting in real work, mentions of loyalty, old photos resurfacing with Nike executives, emphasis on history, time, and earning your place. None of it was accidental. Fans noticed immediately. The timing lined up too perfectly. Every major Clark headline seemed to be followed by subtle reminders of who had already built greatness before the cameras arrived. And that's what made this situation explode. This wasn't jealousy in the simple sense. It was something deeper. It was the realization that the rules had changed, and nobody had told the veterans. The league they helped build was now being driven by a different currency, marketability over legacy. Nike didn't deny it, they leaned into it. Clark wasn't just a basketball player to them. She was a gateway, a bridge to audiences women's basketball had never fully reached before, and in business terms, that mattered more than anything else. But in the locker room, it felt like a reset button had been smashed. And once that happened, there was no going back. This is where things get uncomfortable, and it's important to be clear up front. What follows is speculation, based on patterns fans noticed, timing, and public behavior. Nothing here is confirmed, but once you see it, it's hard to unsee. As Caitlin Clark kept climbing, people started paying closer attention to how A'ja Wilson reacted online. Not to what she said directly, but to what she didn't say. For years, Wilson had been known as someone who celebrated other players loudly. Long captions, genuine praise, energy that felt natural. But when Clark's milestones began stacking up, Forbes rankings, endorsement announcements, record-breaking viewership, Wilson's tone shifted. Or more accurately, it cooled. When Clark was named Athlete of the Year by Time, Wilson posted a short, one-line acknowledgement. No emojis, no enthusiasm, just enough to be polite. Fans immediately noticed because it broke her usual pattern. This wasn't how she normally showed love to other stars. Around the same time, Wilson's posts started leaning heavily into reminders of legacy. Old photos resurfaced, past achievements highlighted, captions emphasizing real impact, sustained excellence, and years of work. Again, no names were mentioned, but the timing was impossible to ignore. Then came the product posts. Wilson began spotlighting her signature shoe more aggressively than ever before, tagging brands, emphasizing loyalty, stressing how long she'd been building her relationship with sponsors. None of that is wrong on its own. Athletes promote their brands all the time. But fans noticed when it was happening. Every surge in Clark-related headlines seemed to be followed by content reinforcing Wilson's status, almost like a quiet counterbalance. Not confrontational, not aggressive, just pointed. There were also interviews where Wilson spoke broadly about paying dues and how recognition should come with time. Again, no direct shots, but phrases like hype versus consistency and who's really built this league landed differently given the context. Online debates exploded. Some fans argued Wilson was simply protecting what she'd earned. Others felt the energy came off as frustration, watching the spotlight move away from someone who had done everything the league asked of her. And that's where the silence mattered most. Wilson never fully shut the rumors down. She never clarified her intent. She never said, "This isn't about her." And in the internet age, silence becomes its own message. Whether intentional or not, the contrast was clear. Clark was everywhere, smiling through media tour, landing deals, pulling new fans into the sport. Wilson, meanwhile, appeared to be navigating a moment where greatness no longer guaranteed center stage. And that quiet tension, that's what fans kept reading between the lines. But what made it sting even more was what came next. If the money and media attention lit the match, this conversation is what many fans believe poured gasoline on the situation. During a discussion about respect and awareness in women's basketball, A'ja Wilson made comments praising certain players for understanding the advantages they walk into. She spoke about how some athletes recognize the systems that help elevate them faster, and how awareness of that reality matters, especially to Black women who have had to fight longer for the same visibility. She didn't name names, but the internet filled in the blanks immediately. Fans clipped the audio, reposted it everywhere, and began connecting dots to Caitlin Clark without hesitation. Some viewers interpreted Wilson's words as a broader critique of how the league, media, and sponsors choose who gets amplified. Others felt it crossed into uncomfortable territory and unfairly targeted Clark for opportunities she didn't personally create. That split reaction is what made this moment explode. Supporters of Wilson argued she was speaking from lived experience. They pointed out that many Black women in sports have dominated their fields for years without receiving even a fraction of the attention or financial backing suddenly available now. From that angle, the frustration wasn't about Clark. It was about a system that waited until the right kind of star appeared to finally invest. On the other side, Clark's fans pushed back hard. They argued that Clark's rise was driven by performance, fan connection, and undeniable impact on viewership. They felt framing her success through privilege minimized the work she put in and unfairly placed blame on her for decisions made by corporations and networks. And that's where things got messy. The conversation stopped being about basketball and turned into something much bigger. Social media timelines filled with debates about race, marketability, fairness, and who really benefits when a league grows. Some fans accused Wilson of bitterness. Others accused the league of selective support. Almost nobody stayed neutral. What made it more intense was the lack of clarification. Wilson didn't walk her comments back. She didn't double down either. She let them sit. And once again, silence became fuel. Every new Clark headline revived the debate. Every Wilson interview got dissected for subtext. Whether Wilson intended it or not, that moment reframed the rivalry in the public eye. It was no longer just veteran versus rookie. It became legacy versus momentum, system versus spotlight. And once a narrative reaches that level, it stops being easy to control, because now everyone thinks they see the truth. And the league, it was caught right in the middle. By this point, the tension wasn't just about two players anymore. It was about what the league was becoming in real time. Because as WNBA numbers exploded, the power dynamics quietly shifted. Broadcast partners changed how they scheduled games. Media coverage narrowed its focus. Marketing dollars followed the eyeballs. And one name kept coming up over and over again: Caitlin Clark. This wasn't subtle. National broadcasts prioritized her matchups. Pre-game segments centered on her story. Post-game coverage lingered longer when she played, even in losses. For casual fans, it started to feel like the league had a main character, and everyone else was rotating around her orbit. That perception mattered. Veterans who had spent years carrying the league through lean seasons suddenly found themselves sharing space in a system that no longer needed to spread attention evenly. Growth had arrived, but it came with hierarchy. And that hierarchy wasn't built on tenure or championships. It was built on reach. For someone like A'ja Wilson, that shift hit differently. Wilson had been the face of winning, the league's safest bet, the example used in conversations about excellence and leadership. But now, leadership and visibility weren't always aligned. A player could dominate the game and still be secondary in headlines. Fans felt it too. Longtime WNBA supporters started arguing online that the league was leaning too hard into one star. Others countered that this was exactly what growth looks like, that you ride the wave while it's there. More viewers meant more money. More money meant higher salaries. And higher salaries meant better futures for everyone. Both sides had a point. But emotionally, that didn't make it easier for veterans to watch. What made it more uncomfortable was how fast it all happened. This wasn't a gradual transition. It was a snap, one season, one rookie, one cultural moment that flipped years of expectations upside down. And the league didn't slow it down. They leaned in. More Clark-focused promotions, more highlight packages, more social pushes. From a business standpoint, it made perfect sense. From a locker room standpoint, it created an unspoken divide between those benefiting immediately and those waiting for the ripple effect to reach them. That's when people realized this wasn't a rivalry manufactured by trash talk or on-court clashes. It was structural. The game was changing. The business was changing. And not everyone was changing at the same pace. Which raises the hardest question of all. When growth finally arrives, who gets left feeling unseen? Here's the uncomfortable truth most people don't want to say out loud. This situation was never really about dislike. It was about displacement. For years, players like Aja Wilson were told that if they dominated long enough, if they won enough, if they carried themselves the right way, the spotlight would eventually follow. That promise shaped careers. It shaped sacrifices. It shaped how veterans measured success beyond the stat sheet. And then Caitlin Clark arrived and flipped the order. She didn't replace Wilson's greatness. She didn't erase championships or MVPs, but she replaced something else, the league's center of gravity. Attention shifted, conversations shifted, marketing shifted, and once attention moves, it rarely asks for permission. That's what made this moment so jarring. Wilson represents sustained excellence, the kind that ages well, the kind historians will always respect. Clark represents acceleration, a rare convergence of talent, timing, and cultural momentum that pulls everything toward it instantly. Both are valid, both matter, but they exist in tension. Because attention doesn't distribute evenly, it concentrates. And when it does, someone inevitably feels the loss, even if nothing was technically taken from them. That's why so many fans misread the situation as jealousy. Jealousy implies wanting what someone else has. What this looks like instead is something closer to grief. The quiet realization that the game you mastered is now being played under new rules, that the scoreboard you were chasing has been replaced by a different one entirely. And no one warned the veterans. The league didn't prepare them. The sponsors didn't explain the shift. The media didn't frame it gently. It just happened, fast and publicly. Meanwhile, Clark didn't ask for any of this tension. She didn't create the contracts. She didn't choose the coverage strategy. She just showed up, played her game, and accepted the opportunities that came her way. That's why this story feels so layered. There's no villain. There's no clear victim. Just a collision between legacy and momentum. And that collision is happening in real time, in front of millions of eyes, inside a league that's finally getting the attention it's always wanted, but at a cost few anticipated. Because when the spotlight narrows, even legends can feel invisible. And that's the part that still hasn't been fully reckoned with. What's happening right now isn't just a rivalry or a rough adjustment period. It's a full power shift. For the first time in its history, the WNBA isn't being driven primarily by championships or dynasties. It's being driven by gravity, the kind that pulls cameras, sponsors, networks, and casual fans toward one focal point and keeps them there. That focal point is Caitlin Clark. Whether people like it or not, the league now operates in two layers. There's basketball power, wins, rings, MVPs, leadership. And then there's influence power, ratings, reach, market pull. For decades, those two things mostly overlapped. The best player usually carried the biggest platform. That's no longer guaranteed. Clark sits at the top of the influence layer. Networks plan around her. Sponsors budget around her. Entire schedules bend to maximize exposure when she's on the floor. From a business standpoint, it's logical. She brings eyeballs that simply weren't there before. But basketball power hasn't disappeared. Players like Aja Wilson still define winning. They still set standards inside locker rooms. They still determine who lifts trophies. That authority hasn't been taken away, but it has been overshadowed in ways the league has never navigated before. And that's where friction naturally forms. Because power without visibility feels diminished, and visibility without legacy feels questioned. The WNBA is now balancing both at once, in real time with no blueprint. Veterans are adjusting to a world where dominance doesn't guarantee headlines. Younger players are entering a league where one breakout star can reset expectations overnight. And the league office is learning that growth doesn't arrive evenly. It clusters around faces, stories, and moments. This isn't good or bad by default. It's just reality. But it does mean the old hierarchy is gone. The new power structure rewards those who can carry the game and the audience. And while that brings unprecedented opportunity, it also creates pressure points that didn't exist before, especially for players who did everything right under the old system. The biggest question now is whether the league will grow. That's already happening. The real question is whether the WNBA can hold space for both kinds of power at the same time, without turning greatness into an afterthought. Because how the league handles this moment will decide not just who gets paid, but who gets remembered. This entire moment comes down to one uncomfortable truth: the league is still learning how to sit with. Greatness and cultural impact are no longer the same thing. For decades, WNBA operated under a single ladder. You climbed it by winning, by dominating, by sustaining excellence year after year. That ladder built legends like Aja Wilson, players whose resumes will always hold weight, no matter how the game evolves. Wilson's legacy is secure. MVPs don't disappear. Championships don't expire. Her name will always live in the GOAT conversations because she earned it the hard way, inside the lines, against the best competition over time. But the league doesn't live on legacy alone anymore. Enter Caitlin Clark, a player whose impact stretches far beyond box scores. Clark didn't just bring fans, she brought new fans. She didn't just boost ratings, she reintroduced women's basketball to people who had never paid attention before. That kind of reach rewires how a sport grows. And that's where the tension truly sits. Wilson represents what the game was. Clark represents what the game is becoming. Neither role is wrong. Neither diminishes the other. But they exist on different axes, and the league hasn't fully figured out how to honor both at the same time. Fans want clean narratives, heroes and villains, jealousy or entitlement. But real shifts are never that simple. This is what transition looks like when a league finally breaks into the mainstream after years of fighting for relevance. Someone builds the house. Someone turns on the lights. Wilson helped build it. Clark brought people through the door. The challenge now isn't choosing sides. It's whether the league can celebrate sustained greatness without punishing visibility, and reward visibility without erasing legacy. Because if the WNBA gets this balance right, this moment won't be remembered as a divide. It'll be remembered as the turning point. The moment women's basketball stopped asking for attention and started commanding it.